Hey guys, as you can see, I'm not doing the usual today. I'm not out and about on an adventure. I'm actually in the comfort of my own home, and I'm going to do something a little bit different today, something I haven't done before, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of, but there will be some more coming later on. I'm doing a book review. Um, I know that's a little bit different, but I'm not going to do like I said, I'm not going to do a whole lot of these, but I will do them if it's something that I feel like my viewers may be interested in. So yeah, I'm going to do a book review today, and we'll see how that goes. The book that I'm going to be talking about, The Ghosts of Bellamy Bridge by Dale Cox. Now, on the cover, it doesn't have the subtitle, but there is a subtitle, and it is listed right here on the front page. The Ghosts of Bellamy Bridge, 10 Stories of Ghosts and Monsters from Jackson County, Florida. So it's not just about Bellamy Bridge. Um, the book's divided up into two sections. The first section, which is about half of the book, is about Bellamy Bridge. And I don't want to give anything away, so I'm going to keep this really brief. But here's the reason why I would recommend you read this. The author, Dale Cox, is a historian. So, what Mr. Cox presents in this book about the ghosts of Bellamy Bridge is most likely different than the story that we all heard growing up. A lot of us, if you're from Jackson County, Northwest Florida, Southeast Alabama, a lot of people have heard about the ghost of Bellamy Bridge. But Mr. Cox presents information that you have not heard before. Uh, I don't want to give much of anything away. You need to read it. The guy's done a lot of work and a lot of research, and he knows his stuff. So I'm not going to give it away, other than to say that the story that we all heard have a lot of elements of truth to them. But I think that there are a couple points of the story that over the decades that the story has been relayed from generation to generation have kind of been blurred, for lack of a better word. There's a couple of elements that I think have been combined into one narrative when there was actually a couple of different things involved. So I'm not going to give that away. I'm spoiler free here. Um, but did you know everybody's heard the story of Elizabeth Croom Bellamy? Uh, but when it comes to supernatural occurrences supposedly happening at Bellamy Bridge, there the the ghost of Bellamy Bridge, being usually referred to as Elizabeth Bellamy, is not the only thing that took place there that could be a cause of whatever it is that people experience. There are several other historical facts, events that took place at Bellamy Bridge that are in this book. I highly advise checking it out for that story alone. But here's the best part. As the subtitle, which isn't on the cover, as I mentioned, suggests, only half the book is about Bellamy Bridge, and it really goes into detail. Section 2 is about other stories in Jackson County, many of which most of you probably haven't heard before. Now, I'm not going to go into those stories. As I said, check out the book yourself. But I will read the title of the chapters. This book goes into the Graceville Spook Lights, which I've done a video on myself, the Two-Egg Stump Jumper, the Headless Indian Chiefs, the Wild Man of Ocheesee Pond, the Ghost of St. Luke's Episcopal Church. That's an interesting story because that story is linked directly to the Civil War battle that took place on Lafayette Street on Highway 90 that runs right in the middle of Marianna. That Civil War battle took place right outside and right around and even inside the original St. Luke's Episcopal Church. Very interesting. you learn something. The Ghost of the Russ House, Ghost of Old Paramore, and I never know if I'm pronouncing this correctly or not. So forgive me, correct me in the comments. Um, Ghost of the I always pronounce it Ellie Krigler Mansion. Maybe it's Eli Krigler Mansion. I'm not sure which, but I always say Ellie Krigler Mansion. Um, Chapter 15, the ACOC ghosts, and then chapter 16 is really a bonus because it is other stories, and they're pretty brief, but there's stuff on there that you probably haven't heard about before. So, The Ghost of Bellamy Bridge, 10 Stories of Ghosts and Monsters from Jackson County, Florida by Dale Cox. I want to tell you a little bit about Dale Cox. Mr. Cox, I had the pleasure to meet him a few weeks ago. He did an event at Landmark Park in Dothan, and it was on the ghosts of the wiregrass. There were several stories there that I had not heard before. Most, obviously, this is kind of what I'm into. Most of them I had heard, but there were things there I had never heard of before. Mr. Cox is a historian. Now, if you watch my videos, if you've seen what I do, um, I'm a amateur folklorist. Okay, I hear of stories. I've heard of stories my whole life. I go to the place. I give you a brief synopsis of what supposedly happened or occurs there, and I let you get a look at it. That's what I do. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I don't do all that. I just go, and for anybody who's interested who happens to be looking these subjects up, there's something on YouTube or Facebook or wherever. There's something available so they can go to look at it, because some of these stories, I always found it was odd that there's not that much content on some of the places that I go to. You can't find pictures, you can't find video on some of these stories that have been around for decades. So I go to it just so that you can have a look. And maybe there are paranormal investigative teams that would be interested and would like to go look at it. Um, and that's fine. But that's what I do. Mr. Cox is a historian, and he has so much knowledge. Uh, I don't believe that Mr. Cox would define himself as a folklorist. I think he's a very good folklorist, but he's a historian who is so knowledgeable that he happens to know the information about the folklore as well that's tied into historical events and places. Um, so that's the difference. I don't think that he would, necessarily call himself a folklorist. Historian with an awful lot of knowledge about the folklore, historical events, people, places. Um, Mr. Cox has a lot of information available. Um, he puts out a lot of media that can be found on YouTube or on Facebook through Two Egg TV. Two Egg, like the small town with the funny name in Florida. Two Egg TV. That's on YouTube. They have a Facebook page. Now they are part of Old Kitchen Media. Old Kitchen Books is what published this book, and I believe all of Mr. Cox's other books as well. Um, they have so much great content. Some of it's folklore, a lot of it's history, but it's really, really good. And they're not necessarily limited to the Florida Panhandle, Jackson County, even the Wiregrass area. They've done several videos where they go out to. They've done some content from Mobile. They've done some content in Helen, Georgia, which I would very much like to visit. For the last several years, I've wanted to go to Helen. Uh, it's the town in Georgia is set up to where it looks like a Bavarian village, basically, and they get a lot of tourism there. People go to take a look at it, and it's really neat. It's almost like a place. It's like a little town was taken from one continent and found itself in the middle of another. So it's pretty neat, and I really look forward to maybe one day getting to check it out myself. Um, but Two Egg TV, Old Kitchen Media, everything that Dale Cox and Rachel Conrad do is so informative and entertaining. And Mr. Cox, the way that he presents his material is, I can't really describe it, but I think most people, we all have an uncle that's really into history and they kind of drone on and on and on, and you lose your interest really quick. Well, Mr. Cox is not that guy. He's not your uncle that's boring with long winded history stories. Mr. Cox presents all of the information you could ever want, but he knows how to deliver it in a timely manner that keeps you interested until he's done. And I think the world of what he does. Um, if you've seen my videos, if you've seen my Facebook for hiking the haunts, if you've seen my YouTube channel, I don't really do a whole lot. I share my stuff, but I don't do a whole lot to promote myself or what I do. My stuff is there for anybody who happens to be looking for information on this particular subject. That's all I really do. But I will promote Two Egg TV and Mr. Cox, Old Kitchen Media. Everything that Mr. Cox and Rachel Conrad do is worth your time, and you're going to learn something. That's why I wanted to do this video. Um, the last thing that I really want to say about this book in particular is I feel like it goes hand in hand with another book that most people in Alabama grew up with. Your school library probably had a copy of 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey by Catherine Tucker Wyndham. Um, these are written in two very, very different styles, but based on the legends, the folklore involved, and the region that is discussed in both books. To me, these make great companion pieces to each other. So if you grew up with 13 Alabama Ghosts, check out The Ghost of Bellamy Bridge and the other stories involved. To me, they complement each other. They go together as companion pieces, and they may be different sizes, but they sit right next to each other on my bookshelf. Um, the difference in the delivery being that Catherine Tucker Wyndham she definitely knew her history, but she was a storyteller, whereas Mr. Cox is a historian. So they're written a little bit differently. The delivery is great for both of them, and you get all the information you could ever want. Either book's great. Uh, I only pointed out to just say that to me they go together really, really well. Um, Wrapping up, I highly advise you check this book out or any of the number of other books that Mr. Cox has done. He has several others that I can't wait to get my hands on and dig into. Um, you can get his books, Mr. Cox's books are available. I believe oldkitchen.org. I believe they have available where you can order off of there. Any of his books are available on Amazon, either in soft cover, physical copy if you like that. I'm kind of a traditionalist, although I do use Kindle occasionally. But you get a soft cover physical copy, or they do have it on Kindle available as well. If you want to pick up a copy in person, Mr. Cox constantly has different events throughout the area that he goes and does, and his books are available at his events. But Bespoken Gifts in Mariana carries his books. Yates Pharmacy in Malone has the books available, and the Bainbridge Historical Society Museum in Bainbridge, Georgia, also has some of the books available. So do yourself a favor, check them out, and I've really enjoyed my copy. I picked it up, like I said, when I was able to meet Mr. Cox at Landmark Park in Dothan. Anyway, I'm very enthusiastic about this book. I don't have a star rating, but if I did, it would be 5 stars or whatever the top rating would be. I very much enjoyed this. It was very informative. Not only did I get my fix on folklore and ghost stories, I learned a lot too. The historical accuracy is just off the charts, and check it out.